Hi, I'm Sam, and today I'm here with Anton Jacob, CEO of Smart Hands Africa. The reason we are here today is to talk through and give some insight into a new tech in the industry called OMNIA. So, Anton, for someone who has never heard of OMNIA before, how would you explain what it is in the simplest terms?
That's a very good question. It's a very simple question, but a very difficult question to answer based on what the product can do. I think to sum it up, if you looked at it, you could probably say something along the lines of advanced connection meets next-gen protection. To simplify it, it's one device, one solution, one price, and pay as you go. And it's something we saw as an opportunity or not as an opportunity, but we saw something that Africa really needs, based on our experience in the industry over the last 25 years and the complications at small to medium business level in being able to get the same kind of services made available to them, both from a connectivity point of view and from a protection point of view at an affordable price.
What problem would you feel OMNIA actually was created or is here to solve for people in Africa?
Oh, wow. Okay. We break it up into four areas. We call it connect, protect, detect, and that's more the official areas that we would cover in terms of going through it. But the final part I would add to it is get, and I'll cover that at the end. Let's first look at connect. If you look at the world we live in the continent of Africa today, we are never 100% sure that we're going to have constant connectivity, albeit from the form of connectivity we're using, whether we're having power failures, whether we are working from home, a small office, traveling. All of these are challenges that businesses in Africa face today, and being constantly connected when you need to be. From a protection point of view, dependent on the kind of business you have, you have small businesses, you have medium businesses, you have enterprise businesses, and all of them have different requirements. Yet the basic fundamentals of what would be considered the norm or minimum type of security, many organizations today bypass it just from an affordability perspective or from a lack of understanding and knowledge. I think the entry point also to having the right skills in a small business to support your environment is a constant challenge. Many small businesses are out there trying to create a living. Their core business is generating revenue around their go-to-market or their products. They don't want to worry about technologies. And it's my experience in many of the products that I've been involved in over the years, what we have is completely different. It is a lot more affordable. And a lot more predictable in terms of costs. And just that in itself makes it a standout option for many small to medium businesses and enterprises.
I see you really walked through the different parts of OMNIA there, but I'm thinking let's maybe break it down a little bit further. Walk us through what it means by connect, what it means by detect, and what it means by protect.
Okay. So let's start off with. So first of all, as a solution, what's incredibly important is there's two components to it. The first component is in the cloud. We have two separate gateways set up at a very high sustainable cloud environment, highly secure. And in there, we have our security stack and the managed service component. And we'll talk a little bit about that. The most important point I want to say about that right now is that whichever country we have partners in, we will actually implement the gateways in that country to ensure that we have data sovereignty, because that's quite a big issue across Africa. On the other side of it is the device that we supply. And literally, it falls under green computing because it's green, called the OMNIA device. This is literally a CPE device that has been approved by ICASA. And at the back, you'll see it's quite simple in terms of the connectivity. And you will have 3 ports for connectivity, and I'll cover that in a second, and 2 ports for networking, and USB ports for things like external modems or external switches, etc. It's literally that simple. So technically what we're saying is that we have all the security and the knowledge and the power in the cloud. You plug this in at your office, you connect, and you're up and running. It's literally that simple. However, there's obviously a lot of things at play which fall under those banners that I mentioned earlier around connect, protect, and detect. So let's talk a little bit about connect. Connect is and has always been a challenge in Africa, but the important thing to understand is that there are a number of connectivity options available. You can use your lease line, you can use your fiber, you can use LTE, you can even use low orbit satellite. That's the connection part. Then built into this technology is SD-WAN. Typically something you would pay for an extra when obviously you're looking at a security perspective. What does SD-WAN mean? Well, for me, that means always connected, always up. And what that means to a consumer or a person using the technology is that if you have multiple forms of connection, what it means is that no matter which one fails, the others will still continue to work. The technology is clever enough to do that. More importantly, if you have, for example, 3 fiber lines, or you only have 1 fiber line and an LTE as a backup, for example, the 4G, it has the ability to fail over between these lines. It has the fastest failover of any technology available in the world today. It's under 0.1 seconds. Why is that so important? Well, because most businesses are using online technology like VoIP telephone systems. They're working in the cloud with Sage. And because of that failover, you do not even notice the lack of connectivity for that less than a millisecond. And there are stats to show this in comparison to many technologies. That's the one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is because of the SD-WAN, what it does is it bonds all those connection points available to you and makes it available as one pipe. So if you have a 50 meg fiber line, a 30 meg LTE line, and a 10 meg low orbit satellite line, it'll actually work as if you're working with 90 megs worth of capacity. And included in this is the data encryption. So your information is traveling up and down these lines, but it's encrypted. So completely safe to all organizations to transmit and work with. There's a little caveat here, which obviously refers to something we call Smart SASE as part of the solution. There's zero trust network access, etc. There's a software client that's available as an option that you can put on your laptop. So obviously, if you have management or staff that are traveling around, what it enables you to do is access the cloud anywhere at any time using any form of connectivity at a restaurant, on your mobile app, etc. And it provides you with exactly the same security and access that you would have as if you were working from within the office. It allows you, for example, in a restaurant to use your mobile device, the restaurant's internet, and any other up to 6 connections at once. And doing with that what I just mentioned before in terms of what SD-WAN can do for you. So that's a connect component. Yeah.
If I could add to that, I think maybe explaining to people where people sit at a restaurant and they think they connect to the Wi-Fi and they actually think that they're secure, but they're not. So I think that's also fundamental when it comes to OMNIA as well, that you can do it literally anywhere but have the same protection that you do at home. Yeah. Or
Even those working from home, because what you can also do is you could have, if you go home and the wife is streaming something on Netflix, the kids are playing online games, and you could be sitting trying to do work on a Teams call. You can flick on your phone to give yourself a bit of additional bandwidth, and it will bind what speed you have on your fiber connection together with your phone, and it will increase and improve your current connectivity and speed while working like that.
OMNIA really sounds incredible from a connectivity standpoint. Maybe you can now walk us through the protection standpoint and how that works for businesses going forward.
I'm trying to think of a way that would kind of encapsulate exactly just how much of a security product this is, because it's unrivaled in terms of the level of security provided at this affordable rate to organizations. And the important thing here is to first go and look at what customers are experiencing today from a pain point perspective. I mean, ransomware is a massive issue. Phishing, the poppy exposure, the lack of 24/7 monitoring in small businesses. All these kinds of things add up as a cost to an organization. Now, if you look at what we have in the cloud, we are providing coverage and protection, advanced detection, and obviously management to cover all these particular areas for an organization. And it's pretty critical because any business today, if you get ransomware, you're operationally down for however long you decide to wait to pay the ransom, or how good your backup is. That's probably the two scenarios I can give you. What's in it? Okay, what's in the cloud? What are we providing? Well, we're providing next generation firewall. We're providing anti-malware, zero phishing products, URL filtering, these kinds of things, identity-based policies. What does that mean for a business? Well, it means that if I own a company, I can be pretty confident that my system is managing, for example, what applications my staff can access. And those that are a risk are listed as such, and therefore they can't access them. I have the prevention in terms of when I'm clicking on emails and they are not the right emails that you want to be receiving. I will be immediately advised of the fact that we actually opening up a malicious email. And you can even have a hardware detach, which is part of the automatic process as soon as something like that happens when you have infiltration. Um, the most important part about this is that if you go look at this entire service level that we're providing from a protection point of view, what this would normally cost you in the technologies that have been available up to date, it would be one stacked on top of the other. Because you would buy a next generation firewall, then you would have to buy SD-WAN, then you would have to add Smart SASE, then you would have to add your levels of endpoint detection and response, and then your managed services. This is literally costing a customer 1,100 Rand a month, on a monthly basis. And more importantly, you'll see this a little bit later if we talk about it, but it's a pay-as-you-go model. So this is where we just see the wow factor for Africa, the wow factor for medium and small businesses, because now all of a sudden they get what enterprise businesses take for standard at the most affordable price that's available in the market today.
So no one actually feels bound to a contract. There is this option of going month by month kind of thing, more flexible for business.
And here's a very real life scenario. In today's world where you're going and you're buying technology, next generation firewalls, SD-WAN components, etc., you're typically buying the product at a discounted rate. The shock for medium to small businesses comes 12 months later or 24 months later when they suddenly have a renewal contract. Because those renewal prices are based on the purchase price of the product and not what you originally paid. So you may have got a great discount in the beginning, but the next minute you tie it into a renewal, and if you don't pay the renewal, you either lose your equipment and software that you currently have, or you're in for a big expense. And this is why we believe this product is so well suited for the small to medium business environment. And by the way, I keep saying small to medium business. If you go overseas and look at these where this technology is being used, it's predominantly in retail and in government with multiple branches. And this is because many of these branches are in remote areas. You have a single device that's installed. You have options of connectivity to allow them to access whatever they need to be connected to the internet, and then they have a managed service. So you're relying on a single point of failure, which many people may think it's a risk, but it isn't, because of the 99.9% uptime and preventative platform that we put in place.
100%, and why protection I feel is so important. We spoken about connectivity, we spoke about the protection side of things. So what does it mean when you speak about Omnia and detection? What does the detect actually mean for businesses?
So when we talk about a tech, let's take a little step back and say, assume you've been breached. That's everyone's fear. Detect will ensure continuous threat visibility. Now, if you look at the licensing model, we have two models for the product. One would be what we would call the enterprise license model, which obviously would be for home business use, small business use, up to a couple of branches. When you start going into the high level of organizations in the enterprise space, we move to the elite licensing model, which is slightly different, and there's a couple of value adds that are in there. You go down deeper to a level 4 encryption. You have the ability to do XDR, which is extended detect and response, and the products that link into this to add a lot more in terms of preventative measures in organizations, which are a requirement for much bigger and larger enterprise businesses than they would be for a typical small business. But we've taken a small subset of that and made that available in the small to medium business licensing model and enterprise, which we believe is what is technically required at that level.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is small businesses might not actually think they need the same level of protection as these bigger enterprise businesses. Whereas I feel like Omnia could actually help with that gap. So they're kind of getting like a small or like enterprise level security, even though that they are a bit of a smaller business, which I think is quite vital.
Well, that's the most common thought process of every small to medium business. I'm going to give you a scenario. A typical small business today, when they're starting out, the first thing they do is they go out and find a service provider that can give them a fiber line. The next thing is, well, I need to put this in my small business environment, which is either at home or in a small office. So the next thing they need is Wi-Fi. So they would probably typically take a Wi-Fi router from the service provider, connect up to the fiber line, and then they would say, okay, well, I need some form of security. Let me put antivirus on. Now, antivirus and endpoint detection and response technically are the same products, but EDR versus antivirus is two completely different things. It's way more advanced. I mean, the EDR we use in this technology has AI, which looks at behavioral patterns. If it detects something that's going wrong, is an automatic rollback to prior to the infiltration happening, as an example. The problem is in small businesses, using just an antivirus is nowhere near enough. And half of the time it's got to do with ignorance, and the other half of the time it's got to do with affordability. Today we have something that gives you enterprise level security for a medium priced business, and affordability most definitely. The challenge with antivirus, unfortunately, is the fact that it misses so many things. I spoke about it in the protection aspect of the product. You don't know where your staff are going, what websites they're visiting, are they working or not. Now, that's not maybe a security issue, but it is in terms of the sites that they're visiting and what gets downloaded into your network. There was a stat a while back, and I can't remember exactly the amount, but a person infiltrates the company something like 90 to 120 days before anybody even is aware of it. I think it may even be longer. The problem is they be inside of your website, inside of your system, and they know what's going on in your system before anybody even is closely aware of what's going on. There was a great saying that someone said to me the other day. It said, if you haven't been ransomware yet, it's because you're not making enough money. Make sure this is in place before you make your money.
So thus far, you've mentioned 3 important aspects. Early on, you mentioned a 4th aspect when it comes to Omnia. You mentioned get. Tell us a little bit more what you actually mean by that.
Great question. Get, something I made up this week while we were training the channel. We kind of mentioned all the valuable options available to customers in the connect, the protect, and the detect space. We forgot about the get part, in terms of how do I get this product? Why is this so different to what's available in the marketplace? I think it's very important to understand that from a business perspective, there's 2 costs. There's buying the device, which is as affordable as an entry-level firewall today, except it has way more functionality. And there's a single monthly subscription on a pay-as-you-go model, no matter how many users you have in your office. So it's not price per user. So that is the cost. The cool thing is no contracts. It's a pay-as-you-go model, as I mentioned. You have no surprises down the line in terms of any renewals that has to happen on the software maintenance or on the hardware. And finally, no long-term tie-in. The important thing is that if you can't use it in this business anymore, it's not tied to that company in terms of serial numbers and support, etc. You can pick up the device and take it through to another business of yours anytime you want to.
No, fantastic. Anton, thank you so much for your time today. I think you've explained the product very well, and it seems like it's going to solve a lot of issues that we currently sit with in Africa, and we can't wait to see what the product can do for many businesses.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.